Well, this is it. This is a tour of my Alamo set that I've built throughout the course of a year. It's been very fun, and it's been featured in several film projects. But the time has come to take some of it down. I'm still keeping the main gate in the chapel, but the rest is going to be torn down. But before that, I'm going to be releasing a short film called Bloody Sunday. And before that film's filmed, I would like to give a little tour of the entire set. But before I start the tour, let's start with some props and characters. Starting with the commander of the Alamo, we have William Barrett Travis. He is holding his army saber and his shotgun. All these minifigures are used with official Lego parts. And it's pretty easy to replicate. Most of it is a guy from Fantastic Beasts. And the saber is of 2 pieces, using a long kind of, I don't know what kind of piece, and this disc. But this is William Barrett Travis, as close as I could replicate him. Next we have Jim Bowie. I tried to replicate him from paintings, and what else I could find off of him. And I mean, he looks alright. I used the Aquaman face, a basic hairpiece, and Voldemort's body. And some basic black legs, so he looks pretty good. And now let's move on to Crockett. Here we have Colonel David Crockett, a minifigure I spent a while just trying to perfect as close as I could. Now I don't have an actual coonskin cat piece, so I just took some black cloth and a robber hat and called it a day. He's carrying Betsy and his knife, which is a batarang just cut in half. He's using Scarecrow's torso and I think some werewolf pants. Overall, it looks pretty good, you know. And now let's go with another portrayal of Crockett from John Wayne's Alamo, which heavily inspired the set. Here we have John Wayne as Davy Crockett. He's using the same method I used for the coonskin cap, and his vest is just cardboard, since I don't think there's an official mold that can match his vest. I tried to perfect him using images from the movie, and he looks pretty good. Although, I have to say, as an Alamo historian who studies the Alamo, Crockett's uniform in this is very strange, but, I mean, it looks good. I still like it. I can tell, though, he used a lot from the costume from his film. I think it was, Hondo? Yeah. It basically looks like the Hondo costume, but replaced with a coonskin cap. But now let's move on to the last minifigure, which is just a random Tennessean. We have a random Tennessean that I based off just extras in the 60s movie. I don't know why I kept him, but I just kind of like the simplicity of the minifigure. He has his rifle, a cap, and that's really it. You know, he looks good, he's ready to defend and die for the Alamo. So now let's move on to the props, and then we shall get to the tour. So over here we have a small cannon with a loading thing, the sponge you use to load it. I mean, it's pretty basic, but it's been here since the beginning of this set. So let's move on to some bigger cannons. Over here we have the cannon that's defending the palisade. It is positioned right up to my more recent palisade that wasn't in the film, but this is probably my best version. And I'd say for a cannon it looks pretty good. Yeah. So let's move to the iconic 18-pounder from the battle. Here is the 18-pounder. It has some shrapnel to be loaded into it, since that's what they use. It's basically a giant shotgun. We have the loading sponge, and the final cannon is the one stationed at the top of the chapel, used in the ending of my film. Here we have the cannon loaded at the top of the chapel. It's small, and it's actually been used in way earlier Alamo movies that I haven't uploaded. If you would like to see that, please comment down below, but this is my oldest cannon. I don't know how it survived all these years, but there it is. Let's move on to some other props. So here we have the Texas flag that flew over the Alamo at the end of my film, on top of the modern recreation of the Alamo, which actually is what this chapel was originally be. It was just a recreation of how the Alamo looked, and then I eventually used it for films, and then I just moved it to how it looked in the John Wayne movie. And right next to it, we have the 1824 flag flying over the Alamo. The wooden base isn't there, as I used it for a different build, and that's the main reason I'm tearing down most of the set, is because I need the pieces for builds. But now let's start with some other props, and then we'll do the tour. Over here we have this small area just where I put all the props. It's just some wood over here for the for when I was filming. I never really took it out. It's a hammer. This is Crockett's costume based on, I think, Dawn at the Alamo. No, it was Crockett's Last Sunrise, which is what I based this on, and this is what I believe he would have worn during the actual battle, just kind of what Billy Bob Thornton wore in the movie. And there's tape around it because, if you notice towards the end, he has something weird on his leg, and that's because his leg broke during filming, so I kind of had to improvise. But yeah, there it is. Probably, you know, a good costume. There's some more sponges over here. Here we have the custom bagpipes I made with a stud there. We have some rifles. We have the map of the Alamo compound, just miniaturized for my film. We have the white flag of truce. We have an extra cannon piece. We have some of the Mexicans' instruments. We have Travis's telescope. We have these things used to beat the drums, the drumsticks. And we have an ink and a quill pen. We also have, I think this was supposed to be a bugle in my film. It's just, I don't know, some of these were kind of rushed. We have just the paper that Travis was writing. Then we have a folded piece. This was an extra thing to hold these cannons up at the bottom. We have a coin and another drumstick, and if I can reach it, we have Travis's ring that he gave to Susanna Dickinson's baby. And then over here, these are, I believe, the last props for now. We have Crockett's violin and his bag with the violin stick on it. I don't know what it's actually called. You can correct me in the comments. But now we can start with the actual tour. Alright, I have moved the Alamo to a more open space to where we can take a look. So let's start with the main gate. So here we have the cannon and the wall itself. This is based off the John Wayne film, with some creative liberties taken. There's some cannon damage. The stairs leading there. Right here we have a sponge being held, a torch, and there's a hammer right there, and there's some debris from the walls. Now moving back here, the back, we have the entrance of the gate. We have the ladder to climb up. We have a hole to peek out, and another hole. I don't really get to see this angle, so take it all in. Now we're going to start with, I guess we're going to move our way to the barracks. So here we have the barracks. Facing front, they look pretty good, you know. They don't, there's not a way to really look inside, but I'll figure something out. Now this is behind the barracks. I just used a bunch of spare pieces for the back since it's typically not seen in the film. So yeah, Luigi's Pizza was at the Battle of the Alamo. And by the barracks we have the ammo stuff. You know, this looks very different than how it originally looked. And just a ladder. There's not much to really say about the barracks. It's just kind of standard barracks. So over here on the other barracks, we have, these are the ones that haven't really changed the most. I recently just kind of went in there and refurbished some. If I can get a light, which I probably will, yep, we can take a look at how it looks. It's not much in there. This is how I build my Lego sets, just spare pieces, because I don't really need to put anything in there. We have the cross that originally was on top of the Alamo Chapel, now just being there for extra wall. And Jim Bowie's room, let's go to that now. So here is Jim Bowie's room. Yeah, he has his cot, his knife, well, knives, the two different knives, and one of his pistols. The other one is, yeah, right there hiding under the desk, and his bottle. This was recently built just for my movie, and there's not much to it. It's just kind of his room. He kind of stayed there, he died there, and yeah. So let's move on to the back of the barracks, the other ones. We have the back of the barracks. There isn't much, but let's start. This is the back of Bowie's room, and I'll just pan the camera across for you to take it. So now let's move on to one of the wooden palisades. Here we have the wooden palisade from the back. It's changed a lot since I first began to film this. We have the two walkways that were also inspired by the John Wayne film. And there isn't much. There's a shovel, and there's a little window for Bowie, but really there isn't much. So we're going to do the palisade, and then we're finally going to finish off with the chapel. Before we move on to the palisade, here's the well. There's not much, but actually I just noticed this while filming. If I can move the camera around on the side. There's some blood there that is probably from the recent Alamo movie where I didn't use Lego bricks as blood. I actually put blood in there. So yeah, I guess that's just staying there. So now let's move on to the palisade, and then we'll move on to the chapel. So here's the palisade. There's nothing much. There's the cannon, there's the line drawn in the sand near it, the rocks, and if I can trigger a light in there, you can see some white stuff in there because I originally was going to put smoke using a mix of some spray stuff, and that kind of got a lot of white everywhere, so I had to clean that off during the filming of the battle. But it's featured, and even some of it's on the chapel. But here's the cannon, there's a fireplace, and the rocks, just to kind of help keep the bullets from just piercing through the wood. So there's not much, so now let's get to the chapel. So here's the chapel in all of its beauty. This is the one that I worked the most on. So starting at the top, we of course have the 1824 flag on a pole. We have, you know, the hump that John Wayne had. We have the entrance there, so let's go through. Inside the chapel, we have a broom holding a piece to where I can always switch the chapel out to look like the modern Alamo. On the other side, we have the flag. Going through here, we have where Susanna Dickinson would be. And then going up this ramp, we have where the final stand was made on the cannon, with two wooden areas. So now, on this side of the chapel, we have just kind of not much going on, just not too much detail. This is, I don't think, ever seen the back of the chapel. This is where all my spare Lego bricks went into to make this. And then, this is a side of the chapel. And then this is another side. And then right here, we have just the final side of the chapel. And that concludes my tour of my Alamo set. I hope you all enjoyed this one last look at this very big build. This is the biggest Lego build I've ever done, and hopefully you will be able to enjoy it being used one last time for Bloody Sunday. Until then, this was Lone Texan 1836, and this was the Alamo.